Hello and welcome to tonight's Automation and Testy Daily Lockdown Questions. For the rest of lockdown in the UK, to give myself a break from being in lockdown, I decided I would record one answer to a community question every day. So this is question number 3. Question number 3 came in via the Ministry of Testing Club, and it came in from Sravika. And they were asking, when building an automation framework from scratch, what needs to be considered? Very interesting question. I imagine, I think a lot of you have faced, a lot of you have already done. But the first thing that comes to my mind is testability. So if you're not familiar with the word testability, whenever you see any of these ility words, basically wrap the ability or the ility bit in quote marks, and that should tell you what it is we're talking about. So in this instance, we're talking about our ability to test. Or for a more expanded explanation, we talk about how easy something is to test in a given context. So for me, the reason why I bring that up is a bit like yesterday's answer. When we talk about an automation framework, we're building an automation framework to support our testing activities. So therefore, we need to understand, we need to do recon, we need to do an audit, we need to measure our testability. And there's certain bits of testability that are important to deciding our tooling and our approach to automation. So I'm going to use a model called the Tempies of testability. This model was created by Rob Meany and Ash Winter as part of their book, which I forget, but I will add a link if I remember. But they have a book on testability, which is on LeanPub, so I'm sure you can Google it and you'll find it. So in order to understand your testability, there's certain characteristics you could measure, as I mentioned, or you could explore or understand or gather information on. So I'm going to go a few of these on the ones that I think help support my answer to this question. So people, obviously massively important. We're building automation, or we're buying tools, or we're building frameworks to assist people, to help those people get the information they need. So therefore, in order to design a framework from scratch, so let's assume that we're going to build one from scratch, we have to think who's going to be using this framework and what's coding ability do they have. Is everyone on the team going to be able to go into the code and start making tweets and creating new checks? How much testing knowledge do they have? Because obviously if you're automating a check, you have to have some level of testing knowledge or awareness of what it is you're trying to automate and why you're automating it. So that should give you an answer into some of the tooling you might want to explore. I'm not saying do this, but for example, a lot of people build frameworks where not everyone does have great coding skills, but they want them to contribute. So they might interact with something like a test case management tool, or add a gherkin layer, or a keyword-driven framework, or something like that, where you don't need as stronger coding skills as the people who built the framework. So there's something to consider there underneath people. Philosophy. Who else is going to create the automation? Is it just you? If it's just you, obviously you go down the tooling route that best suits you. But if the whole team are going to contribute, including the developers, they're going to have obviously a lot more skills than us when it comes to coding. So they might be in a better place to be able to support you in maintaining and building this framework, but then also adding checks to it. So yeah, if the whole team's involved, fantastic. Make sure you include them in the design of your framework. And then again, massively important now, talking about an automation framework, what layers of your product can you test on? What layers of your product do you want to test on? Because that's going to, again, it's going to dictate your tooling. You want to automate on your API, you're going to have to include some sort of API library. You're doing it on the UI, you're going to want to include that. You're doing some visual testing, you're going to want to include that. You're doing some JavaScript testing. It starts to expand, but again, you need to know, is it possible to do that on your app yet? If it's not, don't go ahead and build a framework to automate on the API if you don't have access to the APIs. Get the access to the APIs, make sure they're testable, then look at adding API into your automation approach. What's your process for building this? A lot of companies I've seen in the past, they go for the big bang approach. So it's like, we need automation now. It's like, okay, right. So what they do is they then say, we need it now. But what actually happens is they spend 3 to 6 months building a framework, and that isn't now, that's 3 to 6 months now from time. So perhaps you want to gradually build it up. So therefore, just start small. What's your current problem? Build something that supports that. When the next problem comes along, adapt and refactor your framework and keep going and keep going. But again, this ties into this nicely. How long have you got? right? If you're on a short-lived project, you can't be sat there for 3 to 6 months building a framework. So how long do you have? But then more importantly, how much do you have any budget? Because again, a lot of people overlook this when it comes to talking about money. They like to go down the open source route, and don't get me wrong, I love open source, but open source isn't free. The library might be free, but the time it takes for you to go ahead and build the framework and maintain the framework and read a billion blogs, because you're going to need to get to the point to be ready. Or is there a commercial tool that maybe has a cost associated to it? Or even differently nowadays, is there a tool that's packaged up a lot of the things you need into one library, something like Selenoid or Cypress, for example. Taken a lot and put it into a framework for you so you don't have to start from scratch. Again, there is no right or wrong here, but again, do you have time? How much time do you have? And do you have any money to potentially make this easier for you? And then problem should have been number one. Do you even need it? Do you even need an automation framework? And what I mean is, do you even need automation to start with? But also, as we've just said, do you need to build one from scratch? Or is there something good enough already out there? Pipeline. Most of us have or are moving to some sort of CI, continuous integration, continuous deployment, continuous delivery model of some description. Therefore, if your business is one of those, what's already in place? Because some libraries and some languages play better with certain CI tools than others. So if there's already a pipeline in place and your automation is meant to be expected to integrate with that, you're probably going to want to choose that kind of tooling. And that's that. I'm not going to go into the other Ps. I don't think they're as important for the question that was asked. But this is a fantastic model, as I said, from Rob Meany and Ash Winter. And the topic of testability, there's lots of stuff out there. But if you answer these questions, you should start to be able to narrow down your options. And then you can, what I advise after that is you start to do some small experiments. Try a framework out, see how you get on, try another one, try a different one, and so forth, until you get something that fits with you and your team. And just to add into the answer of your question, once you've got it, this is what you're trying to build. You're trying to build something that allows you to do targeted automated checks on the lowest layer that your testability allows. You want to choose a framework that's reliable. So if you are going to go and pick some tools, have a look to see what the support's like, what the documentation's like. Is there a lot of open bugs on it? Have a look to see what's there, because you want a reliable automation framework. You want it to be informative. So think about adding things into your framework that give you more information. So when checks fail, maybe you get some logs, some screenshots, some video recordings. Maybe you get the API logs, the JSON output. Try and make it so that your framework's giving you as much as you can to speed up that debug time, because your checks will fail and you want it to be quick. And on that note, pick libraries that are easier to maintain. Maybe they're easier to abstract. Maybe they're already straightforward. Maybe they're already abstracted for you. But think about maintenance, because checks will change, checks will fail, checks will go outdated. There's always going to be a maintenance, so try and make it as easy as possible. And then finally, you want it to be fast. Not just the execution, that's important. Again, experiment with the different tools, see which ones work better with your application. But then also design it in a way that allows you to debug quickly and get your checks back up and running. So I hope that answered your question. And thank you for posting it. As I said, I'm going to try and do these one a day for the rest of lockdown. No idea how long lockdown's going to last for. But I think there's currently 2 questions in the backlog. So if you do have a question that you want to ask, I'll give a go at answering it. All right. Thank you for watching. Bye.